Food and Beverage Magazine Live, bringing food and beverage to life. With your hosts, James Beard Award winner Jennifer English and Food and Beverage Magazine publisher Michael Politz. Featuring leaders in the hospitality, branded food and beverage, and CPG industries, many of whom are Jennifer and Michael's friends in the business. For an informal and informative conversation where friends in the business share the latest intel, ideas, and best practices. Live, juicy inside scoop from the tastemakers, newsmakers, bread bakers, drink shakers, spoon lickers, clam diggers, farms, foodies, and friends of the Food and Beverage Magazine World. Here are your hosts, Jennifer English and Michael Politz.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Laverne. Hello, Laverne.
Hello, Cheryl.
What's going on? Come on, let's get to our guest. Forget everything else. I'm very excited about it.
We are the Laverne and Shirley of the food industry. This is very funny.
Can we not be the Lenny and Squiggy? Why does it have to be Laverne and Shirley? Can I be the Fonz? Can we just start off to be the Fonz?
Babe, you are the Fonz.
No, I'm the Fonz.
So listen, I've had people email me. I had 2 people email me and say, I love your kimono, and you never actually wear it on the show. How come you don't wear it? And I thought about it for a second, and I realized it's not that I was saving it for special guests, because all our guests are our good friends and everybody's special. But today was one of those shows when I felt like I really had to pull it out of the closet, put on my best threads, and show up. Because we have International Association of Culinary Professionals Award winner, leading celebrated chef, author, consultant, restaurateur, and one of my all-time
He has one of these. Doesn't he have one of these too? A couple of these?
He's got more things than I can count. But I'm going to tell you, before we introduce Raghavan Iyer to our audience, he's somebody with whom I feel a special bond and kinship, because we are of the same generation in the world of food, and we remember then and now. And when you started talking to me yesterday, and over the last several days, we've really been percolating in this idea that we want to revive that intense passion and inspiration that every operator and entrepreneur had when they started their business. Because with this pandemic, we're all getting a reboot, and no one's talking about that broadly and widely yet. We're all still worried about how to keep people safe. Let's just assume we get there, and we will keep giving you tips from experts on how to do that. But what we really wanted to do, and what we've really been seized by, is this idea of passion. And few people have been in this business so long and with such sustained, intense inspiration and passion as Raghavan Iyer. And we're going to talk about how he took his most recent passion and the amalgamation of his cuisine cultural influences to come up with this fantastic, mouth-watering, irresistible, basically Indian pizza concept, among other things. Still rocking it, still actually delighting and satisfying his guests and truly cultivating conviviality as well as flavor. I have to tell you, my spice brother from another mother, Mr. and Chef Raghavan Iyer, hello and welcome.
Well, hello, Mrs. Spices and Mr. Politz.
Hello, Chef.
Great to be here, and I'm just so pleased by all your successes as well. So it's always great to see great things happen to great people. So congratulations on your new show.
Thanks, Raghavan. Let's go back for a second. You've been in this business a while, and you share your perspective with people so generously. And you've been in the business a while. How do you see this pandemic hitting our business? How do you, as one of our sort of, you're practically, what's the term they use for professors? You've got tenure. You're
village elders.
Yeah, you're a tenured professor in the world of food, because you really have that kind of gravitas. How do you see this pandemic hitting our industry?
I really feel this is, it's like somebody is coming with a bulldozer and everything is being leveled out. And I think this might be a great opportunity for the food business to sort of start with a clean slate. Easier said than done, but because all of us wear such multiple hats, and most of us in the food business, especially in the circles that Jennifer, you and I have been involved in, we wear multiple hats, and and everything is right up at the moment. And so I think in the restaurant world per se, I really feel, a good 60 to 80% of the restaurants will never open.
Wow, that is a huge
Yeah.
number.
It is a huge number, and I think because profit margins have notoriously been low, and people and restaurant operators and owners, and I'm talking more independent, when you're a large corporation and entity like a McDonald's or what have you, they've got the resources and the wherewith to sort of ride out these tough times, but the small independent operators don't, they basically live, month to month, and then you yank something like this out of their realm of any chance of making any money, and that completely goes. It's not like they've got, deep pockets or large reserves of money set aside for times like this, because so I feel that's, and I feel like the onus of a restaurant succeeding now really is on the consumer, because unless and until the prices are jacked up, and you're covering not only costs, but you're also covering the healthcare and other needs of people that are working in the industry. And as we know, these are people that are not getting beyond a minimum wage, even if that, and they're not going to afford some of their basic needs met. And so unless and until we do that, we're not going to be able to see any kind of growth, because we talk about, I always go back to the whole concept of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You don't have your basic needs met, and so how are you going to sit there and self-actualize? Because once you're ensured that you're in a business where you're always waiting on people, you're feeding people, but you yourself may go home and not have anything at your own table to eat, and so
I love that you mentioned the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And, I think about it and talk about it with friends regularly, because I think it's an interesting. For people who are joining us, where would you put foodies and operators, hoteliers and restaurateurs, in that relationship with the Maslow? Are our Maslow hierarchy of needs the same as non-foodies?
Not really. I think, when you look at like I just feel like we're all human beings, right?
Right.
All our needs are similar. Basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, love. All of that is, so it's such a common denominator for everybody. But I think as, when you look at people that are in the business of, putting out a good meal or a good experience, they themselves have to have their own personal. I remember when I was struggling, when I first started, 25, 30 years ago. I would do these caterings, and I would, fortunately it was a good business for me, but I remember going to some of these events and doing some of these events, and I would return to my hotel room, and it's like, you're busy feeding everybody else, and the last thing I thought about is like feeding myself. And so you come back to the hotel room, and it's like there's nothing to eat, right? So that particular thing is not addressed. And so I feel like unless and until, again, you make that analogy, right, that you see in the airplanes, the flight attendant always says, put your oxygen mask on before you help others, so I feel in a way, unless and until you as a food professional are physically content, and you're you've got a good meal in your belly, and you've got, the wherewith to actually, do the work so that you can give somebody else a great experience. And I feel like it's sort of like the same analogy. So
I want to talk to you about spices and flavors. You're one of the most limitlessly creative food professionals that any of us have ever met. And
Well,
I don't know if it is because you have traveled such great distance from where you start in the world to where you're cooking today, the influences you have, your just innate talent and curiosity. But I wanted you to speak about the fact, maybe not even speak about, can you talk about the colors and flavors that you paint and cook with?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the reason, why I dig deep and I get a lot out of something is, because I'm Indian. We dig and we dig and we dig and we get everything out of there and we dig some more. I feel
nothing
like
goes to waste.
Nothing goes to waste. And, and I think that's so reflective of a culture like that, and I still am fortunate that I get to go to India regularly, and I can see that with multiple lenses, and, and I see how, people survive and make brilliance out of nothing, Yeah. And so I look at, some of those restaurant kitchens, which are really, they could be a street vendor, and the street vendor's cart is barely 6 feet long, and so.
But it produces magic, or it can produce magic.
Yep, absolutely. So I feel like, it's the knowledge of what you're doing and paying homage and being truthful to your food. And it is eventually, as you go to a restaurant that could be drop dead gorgeous to look at, the ambiance would be perfect. But ultimately, people walk away and they remember the food or not. Yeah. So I feel like the food plays such a big role. And, a lot of people for them, it's like, yeah, okay, that's like a by the way kind of thing. And I'm thinking, whether you're writing a cookbook, whether you are a teacher, whether you have a food show, whether you are, consulting, but it is about the quality of the food. I mean, whatever that you're eating has to provide that satiating factor that I think is so important. And you could tout yourself as being, one of the healthiest cooks out there. I'll use all these whole ingredients and healthy ingredients, but if you don't know what the hell you're doing, your food's going to taste like shit. So I feel like ultimately you have to understand what these ingredients are and what you do with them. It's only then I feel like then you can start to create and flourish.
How does your can you talk a little bit about your philosophy of flavor? Yes.
I always say, when you think about the world of flavors and when you're planning a meal and you're planning a menu, I go back to, my chemistry degree, right? It's a simple equation. Flavor equals taste plus aroma.
Ooh, I love that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, flavor equals taste plus aroma. And so when you look at the taste component of that equation, we address 7 taste elements: hot, sour, sweet, salty, bitter, astringent, and umami. And then you look at the aromatic component of the equation, because the food, and I always say I'm not saying every dish has to have all of that, but if you're looking for a whole meal experience, a complete meal should address all of those elements in its varied capacity. The 7 taste elements, the aroma, but the other thing that we also, I feel like you have to address is the world of texture, the world of color, the world of temperature, because that's what ends up, constituting an amazing meal, is whether you have all of those accomplished and then you feel like, okay, I've eaten something that is absolutely memorable. And I think that's, so when I plan a menu, when I'm entertaining, and again, it doesn't have to be an elaborate thing. I mean, it could be simple dishes,
Well, and we're all locked at home, and sometimes we're in day 2, 3, or week 2 or 3 away from the grocery store, and we may have very limited things to work with. I've been astonished at what you've been producing and putting on Facebook. But then again, you are one of the 100 most influential food people for home cooks of the last century. So it's not that that's a surprise. And you are an Emmy and James Beard Award winner. So that should be no surprise. But I have to tell you, it's that what is not even surprising, but delightful is that inspiration that you approach the world of food with, even when you're in lockdown, even when you're in quarantine, and even when you haven't been to the store for a few days. It's in that you really are very influential.
Well, thank you. I feel like my creativity comes alive when I really have not much to work with, because then it pushes your mind into really looking at a particular ingredient. Right now in the middle of, towards the end, I have a 6-month deadline left to turn in my 7th book. And so I feel like I'm in that phase where I'm always trying to create something out of nothing, because you look at cultures from around the world, they're all masters, right, at creating something spectacular out of nothing, because it's not about, I don't know if you remember, but years ago, there was a husband and wife team that did a beautiful, and this was when Copia was alive and well.
Oh, wasn't that wonderful? We will talk about that.
Yeah, and where, they had this pictorial representation of, everything a particular culture eats during the course of a year.
Yes.
And, you saw these larger than life displays, and you realize it's like, when you look at opulence and material wellness, which translates to the abundance of the food that is in that room, which overtakes the room, the majority of them are packaged or processed, and convenience products. But you look at cultures that have really not very many means in terms of money and material comforts. You look at their table over the course of the year, and they all have ingredients that require them to be put together, and basically your from scratch cooking, and these are cultures that to this day live the lifestyle of plant-based diets, because that's where the goodness is, as we all now know in our Western reawakening. In a way, it's like, oh yeah, this is, everybody should, you look at the buzzwords like plant forward and everything else, and it's like,
or farm to table,
or farm to table. But it is
farm to table is funny, especially when you live on a farm. Raghavan and I have so much of a shared history in our industry, in spite of the fact that he's been primarily in the middle of the country, and we're rarely in the same room at the same time, although we've been very blessed to be at many places at the same time and get to share bites and sips. But one of the things that's extraordinary to me about what he's talking about is there are cultures that we could use the term monolith, and we tend to, wrongly in my opinion, but we do it anyway. We think of certain food cultures as monolithic. Chinese food, Indian food, Mexican food. And when you unwrap and unravel and tease out the elements of what those are comprised of, you realize they are wonderful worlds unto themselves. You see,
you've hit the nail on the head, because that's my biggest pet peeve. It's like, people say, oh, let's go have Indian food, or let's go have Mexican food, let's go have Chinese food. Nobody says, no, let's go have American food, or let's go have Canadian food, there's always a specificity that comes with when you're looking at foods from Western cultures, and so, I'm going to put my, this is not my holier than thou heart, but I feel like, you brought up the issue of we're right now living in a world where people wear their racism on their sleeves, and You'd think everybody, when people talk about, everybody says, oh yeah, he's Asian American, she's Japanese American, he's Mexican American, she's African American, he's Indian American. And so what I have taken it upon myself now is every time I talk about all of these, I attach a qualifier and I say European American, because I feel in my mind it levels the playing field.
And what's the word?
European American.
That's brilliant. Raghavan, that's brilliant.
Well, thank you. Because I feel like, it's almost like, people say, well, it's like you're perpetuating them and us. I said, no, all I'm really doing is I'm playing the leveling field. I'm leveling it out because it's always been something American. But anybody who's non-Caucasian, who's non-European descent, it's always the qualifier attached to it. And I feel that is so unfair. So I feel like European Americans are also foreigners in this country.
Right. That's the funny part, Raghavan. That's the funny part, right? Like European, because, my family came from Eastern Europe, right? Mm-hmm. And however many in the 1800s. And right, they weren't American. Now they'll look at me and they'll say, oh, he's Caucasian, he's American. But no, really, I'm Eastern European, right? Mm-hmm. And I was actually my son.
Know that.
What's that?
We take one look at that podium and we know that.
You can see the face. Well, that's what they're like. What are you? Are you Jewish? And I go, Jewish isn't a nationality, but thank you. And the big joke is my son. They're like, oh, he's Jewish Hawaiian, and I'm like, how about? He's Eastern European and Hawaiian, right?
He's just beautiful. Hey, you know what, you guys are reminding me, this is like a conversation that's taking place in the world of gender. And yes, as an activist in an entirely different realm of my world, it reminds me, when someone, because I tend to dress from here down, like from the screenshot down in my Mr. Jennifer Man Pants for girls based on my foodie build because they just suit me better.
I need a TMI banner right now. I'm making a TMI banner because Raghavan and I did not need to know that.
Raghavan already knows this.
I know a lot about Jennifer. So,
but here's what's funny. We talk about gender nonconforming. What if we talk about ethnic nonconforming?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that what he's doing?
Well, yeah. In a sense, that's what we're all.
Tell us about. So when we were on the other day with, what was her name? Kamal? What was her name?
Maya Kamal.
Oh,
Maya Kamal.
Yeah, she's a dear friend, and I love what
Isn't she lovely? And actually, we were talking about you, too.
Raghavan, they were talking behind your back. I'm not going to lie. That's all. I felt out of place. I felt I went to go. I said, but I love the Vindaloo. Why are you being this way to me?
And Michael told
I love Indian food.
Repeat them, because.
Tell us about your pizzas, because she was talking about them, and everyone's talking. I want to hear about this.
Yeah, which I think it's a great segue into our discussion about how, you put people in boxes and in these little, you assign labels to them, and I see this when I wrote the book about potatoes. It's potatoes from around the world, and so.
And tell everybody the title so they can order it on Amazon, because it is one of those things that's great for the pantry, the pandemic pantry. It's pandemic pantry super friendly.
It's called Smash Mash Boiled and Baked and Fried too. So it's about.
I'm going to try to find it. Show a picture of it.
And so when I wrote the book, I also looked at the fact that there's a reason why potato is the fourth largest crop in the world. And so I wanted to provide a very, very, very global approach to the recipes. The book has a total of 75 recipes. And I think it has only maybe two max recipes from a couple of regions of India. And but so when I went on book tour, reporters always would say, oh, we love Indian potato recipes, and we're so looking forward to the book. And I would very politely say, I said, I'm sorry, but I think you're going to be disappointed if you think this book is about, potato recipes from India. I said, this is really, I said, you're going to have one or maybe two recipes from India. And I said, but the rest of it is from the world. And so people look at you and they assume that the only thing you can do is food from India because that's where your cultural roots are from. And I've lived in the US more than half my life. And so I've been here for 36 years. And so I feel, I like to work with flavors. And to me, that's what I try to do. And I look at, and I've applied that same realm of thinking to the pizzas. And the restaurant is called Pizza Karma. And I've always said what defines pizzas are the medium of cooking. Yeah. So you look at restaurants that will say coal-fired pizzas or wood-fired pizzas, but I've never seen a restaurant that has done pizzas that are fired in clay-lined ovens. Now, is
a clay-lined oven always a tandoor?
In some parts of the world, it's called a tandoor. But that's the other piece of it is that style of cooking in clay-lined ovens is in 80% of the world. And
is that what naan is made in?
Naan is one of the breads that's done in that clay-lined oven.
But in India, it's made in it as well.
Yeah, and you go to in Armenian culture. I mean, they do lavash, which is done in the inner linings of a clay-lined oven.
In Korea and China, it's
yep, that's exactly it. And there's a street food. And so I remember when we had just opened, we had a couple of guests that were visiting from Shanghai, and they both looked at the ovens and their eyes lit up, and they go, "Oh, we cook on this all the time." And so I said, that's exactly my point. I said, so the menu is a reflection that style of cooking is in 80% of the world, so the menu is very global. So I've got the dough that has a double cooking technique, right? The first one is 3/4 cooked in the inner lines of the oven. Then we peel it off the walls and then we top it off. And there's an option of 4 to 5 global sauces from around the world. I have everything from harissa from North Africa to sort of an homage to the south of the United States, where they do so many wonderful things with greens. And I have a sauce that's done with mustard greens and spinach greens that's pureed and flavored with chilies and garlic. And then I've got from Indonesia, I've got a roasted lentil coconut milk sauce with chilies as an option. I've got
Michael, is your mouth watering?
It's like everything I dream about, right? Like I would go to the refrigerator and dip, and I would like jars of like stuff, and people would be like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? That's tiki masala sauce on a pizza. What's wrong with you?" Here's a picture we got. Look at this.
Yeah.
Who is this handsome guy?
Yeah,
that's our friend.
That's my pandemic look.
It looks amazing. And then we have the book. I've been doing this while you guys are talking.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And then we have more books. More books.
Yeah, I've got 6 total. Working on my 7th one, which is also with Workman Publishing, and it's a book that's called "The Master of All Curries: 50 Essential Curries from Around the World."
That's brilliant.
So looking at the diaspora of curry powders as seen through the eyes of the colonial British, because they're the ones who came up with the concept of curry powder. Curries as a concept is so different in India, and that's what the book 660 Curries is all about. But this is now sort of like a companion piece to that book, where now you're seeing, how the rest of the world looks at curry powders, which is very much an English concept. And so that book is supposed to have 50 recipes, and so that's what I'm working on. And so, we're looking at, everything that the spice trade touched, right? All these different countries along the spice trail, which has also followed the Silk Route,
Raghavan, one of the
yeah.
things that I love the idea of is the words in the language of the Indian continent cuisine for mixture. And we have words that have come to mean mixture like curry, but we also have words like masala. And can you just talk a little bit about the notion of flavor chords and the combining or mixing of elements to create these complexities, I'll call them, but they're really humble, simple complexities, which is a conversation in itself.
And the complexity really comes from, it could be one ingredient used in multiple ways, and so I've always said you give whole spices to a good cook, he or she can extract 8 flavors from a given spice. And so depending on what you do with it. And so one of the books that I wrote, sort of teaches you the building blocks of cooking the Indian way, using 10 ingredients or less, including spices. And so,
brilliant.
And I remember one of the recipes in that book, which I did with fresh cucumbers. I did a vegetable stir fry with it. And so you take, these, especially certain times of the year when the cucumbers are going to be all over the place. And so, and I don't know about you, but I love cooked cabbage. I love cooked cucumbers, and people never think about that. So there's a recipe where I take the cucumber, you peel them and you slice them in half and get rid of the seeds, because it's all waterlogged. And so, and then you cut them up in cubes, and then in a little bit of oil, I sizzle some cumin seeds in there, so that's one flavor, right? And then you add the cucumbers to that, and I stir fry that. And the beauty of cooking with cucumbers is when you end up cooking it, it doesn't take much time anyway. You're talking, it's all part of that squash family, right? And so when it's done, which takes you less than 5 minutes, and then towards the end, I add to that a little bit of ground turmeric, and I'll take cumin seeds and I'll grind it as well. And I'll add ground cumin to that and a little bit of cayenne to it, and maybe a chili in there as well for heat, because I love heat. And then salt, obviously, to bring all the flavors together. And then I give it a burst of squeeze from a fresh lime. And then, in that simple stir fry, you've created such complexity by really using one spice in 2 different ways, which is the cumins, which are used as the seed, and then they're ground raw and then added towards the end of the cooking process. So you get this sort of this nuanced complexity, which I think is really, and to me, that's what, and not just food from India, but any culture, one of my, and you both have known her quite well, but one of my dearest friends is Linda Zeta Casper. And we have, now that, unfortunately, she's retired, as you know, and so she's
got more time on her hands.
Yeah, she does, and so, but it's also brought us closer together as friends, and so we've known each other and been good friends for a long time. And before the pandemic hit, we used to get together probably once every 2 to 3 weeks and share a meal together, and we are, so if we go to a restaurant and are having a meal, and we would be, let's say we meet at 5:30 for a meal, and we don't get out of there till 9:30, 10, because we're talking.
That's fun.
We can talk, and this is what, we talk about, right? I mean, everything and anything that has to do with food, and we were talking about this whole concept about, and I was telling her, I said, unless and until people start, especially, again, I'm talking about the Western world, where people start to attribute regional techniques and so on to a particular cuisine. I said, it's only then I feel like a cuisine has come into the mainstream world of, so it's like when you look at, you look at the US now, and, now everybody talks about multiple regions of Italy, right? Because before, when you talked Italian food, it was all red sauces and Southern Italian. And then, of course, and Lynn did the, the ginormous sort of the be all and tell all about foods from Emilia Romagna, and that completely opened up whole region of Italy that people never realized existed.
And you start discovering that there are heretofore swoon-worthy.
Yep.
Delight.
You love that. Swoon-worthy. Delightful. Let me tell you, there's a hidden gem in, I hate to say it now because I feel, Indian restaurant in Vegas. There's but next time, Raghavan, when you come into Vegas, I'm going to take you to this restaurant. And
I'll take you up on that.
He might
my friend
I've not
Chris.
been to Vegas, no.
You need to come because my friend Chris opened a place called Mint. And it is I don't even know how to say, it's just spectacular. The guy, every little detail, it is it's not your just, I love, there's a place called Mount Everest, there's a place called Gandhi, I love them all. But what Chris is doing is what Raghavan is doing. So with the spices, they have a lasso bar and the whole, he goes crazy with all these things. And it is unbelievable. And it's exciting. Like, I always travel. When I go, I always try to go to an Indian restaurant. I try to go to an Ethiopian restaurant. I want to, wherever we are in whatever city we're in, we want to really get to get down and dirty in there, right? And you can see differences in when people are working with different spices. And the fun is when there's like elders in the kitchen. That's when you know you're in the right place, right? Like Jennifer's age. When you see women in the kitchen, Jennifer's age, on that clay oven, making that garlic naan, popping it up with butter, I know I'm in the right place.
My arms are waddling while I do it. Listen, I have to tell you, when I look up at the screen, sometimes I feel so comforted because I think I see my grandmother. I'm like, oh, Nana, how nice. Just like my Nana. But Raghavan, our dear late friend, Nathan Fong, who left us far too soon. He's a dear friend to us both.
It still doesn't sit right, and so, and, again, here talk about a voice that, went too soon, and the way he died, and he died exactly the opposite of the way he lived, and that to me, he's one of the kindest, most gentle people around, and we were very, very close, as so were you, Jennifer, and and we had a lot of laughs and a lot of cries together, and so it's gut-wrenching to think about, here's a voice that, and he was a great teacher because he was a great learner. He constantly was open to learning something.
He was insatiably curious about the world of food and limitlessly generous.
Yes. And so, and I think that's the piece. That's what makes, I remember the first time ever that when I went to my first IACP conference, which was, I don't know, the late 19 or maybe mid-90s, I think. No, 1995 or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That was about the time when, Julia Child was still alive. And I remember this was the first time when we were in Chicago. And so I was sitting in a seminar and, but within a couple of minutes when the seminar started, this larger-than-life person came and sat next to me, and I turned, and it was Julia Child. And I'm thinking, oh my God, and so, and then, but again, talk about somebody with an insatiable curiosity, right? That's why she was such a brilliant teacher, because she was always learning. And so, she was also getting older, and, I would, and once in a while she would, doze off in class, and then she'll wake up and she'll go, what did he say? So, I just never wanted to miss out. And I think that's what makes, and you see, we all have seen personalities in this food world that feel like they know everything, and they feel like there's nothing for them to learn. And,
well, I want to bring up Nathan because in recent years, with the entire world for him to choose from, he led culinary tours to India, and not just to India, the monolith. He was going on very specific regional tours that were culinary tours to India. And he was zealously passionate about really going deep and getting very intimately involved with regional and local and hyper-local things that were so irresistible that you couldn't discover them unless you experienced them. And he understood that. And so that's one of the things that made him such a great teacher and tour leader. But I'll tell, I wanted you to comment on the fact that that was such, he could have gone to China. He could have spent 20 years going to China. He speaks Chinese. That's his ethnic origins, his family traditions. But he chose because he thought it was so seminally, fantastically interesting and important to go to India. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think secretly he wanted to get all the shawls that I was buying there. It's like, bitch, that's not yours, that's mine.
That's funny. That's funny.
And so, but you're right. I mean, you know, he truly loved the nuances, and you know, he.
Can I tell you a body story?
Yeah.
There's a marvelous woman who used to have a restaurant in Vancouver, and Nathan and I would go visit her regularly. She subsequently moved to, I believe she went to Jaipur, but she made the most wonderful dosas, and she had a technique because she was really a master where she could make two dosas at the same time. And Nathan and I were standing aside her in front of her griddle making the dosas and watching her deftly and swiftly and expertly make these doses.
Explain the doses just to be safe so everybody knows what it is we're talking about.
It's a very thin, lacy crepe that is done with rice and a particular kind of a lentil that is soaked and ground, and the batter is fermented, and then you know, and then it's ladled out, you know, thin on a flat top, well-seasoned griddle, and it cooks on one side. And because it's so thin, you don't have to flip it over because it cooks on the top side as well. And so you can eat them plain, you can eat them with chutneys, you can eat them with stews or vegetables. And, you know, the home-cooked dosas are usually smaller. They're about, you know, maybe 6 or 7 inches in diameter, slightly thicker. The restaurants, they do the more showy ones, right? Where it's, I mean, there's a one
14,
particular kind
16 inches in diameter.
Yep.
All right, finish your story, Jen. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure everyone knew what we were talking about.
Okay.
Yep.
So anyway, we're standing beside these expertly prepared dosas, and one set went down, and they were just, it was as if these were the most touched by the gods dosas you'll ever see. And Nathan turned to me, and he was very handsome and very boyishly good looking. And Nathan turned to me when these two ultra large, symmetrical, perfect dosas were on the griddle. And he turned to me, and his eyes, he went like this, like he could do. And, you know, his eyes. And I said, I know. And I said, these are the double D doses, aren't they? Because they look like double D broth cups. And he said, and he gave me the indication that is exactly what I was trying to say.
Jennifer, this is a family show.
I know. Listen, I want to go back to Copia before we wrap up, and I want to address a couple things. I know Raghavan's got a limited amount of time, and I'm so generously. I mean,
before you do that, can I just show this picture to you, Jennifer, because it's very regal, and I want to make sure that everyone sees it. I mean, it is a handsome, regal. Look at this. Look at this. I'm just saying. Is this a television star on Bravo? I don't. You know.
He's an Emmy Award winner. Of course, he's a television star. He's in everything.
There you go. Look at this. Look at this. He's got a face for television, Jen.
No, he's fantastic. Listen, we've got to talk about Pizza Karma. And I don't know, Michael, that you've featured Pizza Karma in Food and Beverage Magazine.
No, we will though now for sure.
Well, we have to. But one of the things, Raghavan, I want to address is what inspired you to tap into that workbox. When you open a restaurant, when you develop a concept, it is a hell of a lot of work. And you've done it enough times and been in the business long enough to know what it takes. And yet, like the greats, you know that you're constantly evolving, constantly learning, constantly being inspired, innovating, and creating. You had something that sparked in you that let's do this with Pizza Karma. Will you talk about that? Because we're trying to inspire restaurateurs at this unique moment in time to reignite that passion if they had it and discover it if they hadn't.
I remember about a little over 2 years ago, I was approached by these couple of gentlemen and said, would you mind creating a couple of sauces for us? We're really interested in we want to do a conventional pizza place and maybe have a couple of, sauces from India. And so, I looked at them and I said, how about some free advice? I said, they go, what? I said, your concept sucks. I said, you have to be... They're all shocked, and so I don't know, maybe I pulled out my diva hat or something, and I said, honestly, why would somebody come to your pizza place when you don't have anything that really stands out? I said, here's a concept to think about, and so I've been mulling about this concept forever. So I pitched them the idea of Pizza Carmine, and I said, do your research. And I said, come back and let me know. I said, if you're interested, I said, I will be more than happy to be your consultant for that. And I will come up with the concept and the menu and the recipes, and I'll do the training. I said, I don't want any ownership interest in it. But I said, it's a concept that I own. I said, I'll give you the permission to use it. And so it's a very franchisable concept. Right now, they've opened 2 locations, and they were about to open a 3rd one in the Twin Cities, and of course, in the pandemic hit, and so that's put on hold. But I think it lends itself really well because people are looking for exciting flavors. They're looking for. Gone are the days I really feel about sitting down and having a fine dining experience. There you go. Look at that. It's
oh my gosh,
chock full of flavors, and and it's very substantial. But it is about that style of cooking pizzas. Everything's about the pizza, and so
look at that.
Yeah, it's
Jennifer. Look at this. Look at that.
Michael,
I can't get enough.
Michael, when I tell you my friends are coming to visit with us and they're going to knock you off your chair.
I would rather go to them. Like, who knew? Wait,
I know.
Raghavan, did you have restaurants in Minneapolis originally? Is that how you?
I've always no. Well, I've got a couple of degrees. I have a degree in chemistry from Bombay University, and I came to the U.S. 36 years ago for my second degree, which was hotel restaurant management. I went to Michigan State.
Oh wow!
So that was, again in the field of hospitality, but that was more on the managerial side of it, So, and then I got a job at working at a restaurant in the Twin Cities area. So that's what brought me here, and it was a North Indian restaurant, which is the cookie cutter restaurants you find in the Western world. And I've always said, there's a gnome sitting under a tree somewhere, stamping out those cookie cutter menus. You've got your same old tandoori chicken and your naan and your 4 sauces, and that's all you find. And so, I've always said the best way to showcase a cuisine is to really present it in a way that, is recognizable to people. And it's, and I do that in my teaching, I do that in the books. And I remember when I was on tour, oftentimes I would go to these, large corporations and, places where food service is run by Bon Appetit Management Company. And, they have, some amazing places, like they run cafes in like Google and Cisco and Yahoo and eBay and things like that. And so, and I would go to some of these where they have a large Indian population, and so Indians would come to me and say, "Oh, you're not doing Indian food, you're doing fusion cooking." and I would look at them and I said, and there was, your food is not authentic or classic, which are two words I absolutely hate. And I turned to one and I said, define to me, what is your definition of authentic? And he went on and on, oh, my mother did this and my mother does that. And at one point I said, I'm not your mother. And I said,
oh my God.
I'm really not that much of a bitch, Michael.
I swear, I can tell.
No, but he is an absolutely deserving diva, because when you have worked to establish a standard and educate people so tirelessly and generously as he had, you're entitled to say, but I've been trying to teach you about this for a long time, and I'm going to remind you gently of this standard.
Mm-hmm. But Jack, don't get offended, Raghavan, because I'll tell you this. Mm-hmm. Whatever Jewish deli I go to, someone will always say, that matzo ball soup is not good there. It is not authentic. Stay away from that soup. Those matzo balls are too heavy. Everybody's got a shtick. Everybody.
Yes. Again, right, there are two kinds of Jewish people in the world, right? The ones who are floaters and the ones who are sinkers.
Right, it's true.
And I'm in the floater category. I love the matzo balls that are light and fluffy. And so one of my dearest friends is a physician. He's retired. He's Jewish. And so he's a great cook. And I remember years ago when I went for my first Passover meal at his house. And because I'm a vegetarian, he made me a vegetarian-based broth, and
nice.
And so he is a remarkable cook, and so we were sitting with his family, and I had put my first mouthful of the matzo ball soup in my mouth, and and his sister says, "Mine, Jeff, your balls are light and fluffy."
I don't even want to be in this conversation with you two. I don't even. The ghost does this. What is going on today, Jennifer?
Listen, Raghavan and I are being very, very good.
Naughty.
Yes.
Naughty would be the word I would use.
Honey,
and my rock stars,
no.
all my rock star friends wouldn't even go there. I am shocked at the naughtiness of you chefs.
Oh, please.
You don't even know from naughty.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, in the minutes that we have left, Raghavan, as a teacher, I'm going to turn to you and ask you, is there something you can share with us that plants like a seed, that thing like a kernel of popping corn that will burst into inspiration, passion, and reimagination and reinvention of every restaurant that is in that ambition to survive this pandemic, but is going to require an operator to be really reimagined and really re-inspired and reignite their passion? Is there something you can do or say that's going to give us something we can carry and blossom and bloom like a spice?
And don't hold back.
Is there anything we can say that's going to inspire these guys?
I feel, that I always say return to the basics in a way, I mean, don't think you have to do something that is larger than life, and you've got, especially in the restaurant world, right, to do something that's larger than life. I mean, you're going to have a larger than life labor cost, and you're going to have, high food costs. And so you want to do things that are inherently cheap and simple, but
smart.
And smart, and you could do remarkable things with it. And so I feel that is so essential in understanding foods of different cultures, and I think that's so if you're doing, you use the word fusion, and I've said, India has been doing fusion cooking for 6,000 years,
Right.
Every invasion, every foreign power has introduced ingredients and techniques that were not native to India, but it's certainly a big part and parcel of it. So I feel like even here in this culture, when chefs are doing all of these, as the hot topics that are trending right now on social media. I forget her name. I don't know who pissed off a couple of. I think she pissed off Chrissy Teigen and somebody else and Marie Kondo.
From the Bon Appetit series.
Yeah, and so she said something about, she had put together a recipe and she called it, she gave it the hashtag the stew, and the flavors were very quintessential from, the southern part of India. And so It was, I hate to say, but it's a curry.
Right.
And she goes, it's not a curry, it's the stew.
or it was chickpeas with coconut milk.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, that's the piece of it, right? If you're going to do something from another culture, don't have the audacity to say, oh, you don't know what it is. Let me tell you what it is, and this is what it is. And pay some respect and homage to the culture that's been doing something like that for thousands of years, and it's like, yeah, this is something that I saw in southern India or northern India or whatever it is from Ethiopia, but respect the source of it. I feel like that is the most, that's in a way, as a teacher, you would go back to what gives you a credibility as a teacher. You respect the source it comes from, right? All of us know that we're not sitting there creating something brilliant that has never been done before. If you think you're the first one doing it, then you're sad.
Except for that.
Well,
except for that.
Well, except for that.
Who did that before, huh?
I'm gonna call it the pizza.
Who did that before, huh? This guy did. That's who did.
And you know what? Julia would love that pizza.
So she would, because she loved, she loved honest, good food, right? Towards the, and when she was filming the Cooking with Master series, she wouldn't have the energy to stand and cook, right? But she would, right there, she would pull up a chair and she would, be larger than life, hovering over whoever's cooking, and she would be involved that way, very much in your face. And, it's like, tell me what you're doing. Why are you doing that? What is that? The curiosity. And so, and even if it's making, mashed potatoes, it's one of the most basic, simple things you can do. But if you understand, in that book, I have a really phenomenal recipe that I call the ultimate mashed potatoes,
and they're delicious. We tried them.
They are. Yep, and they are ultimate, and you could call them hashtag the mashed potato.
Well, Raghavan, I know you've got to run, but I'm going to raise my glass and tell you this little anecdote. On the day, and I'm sure you remember this, but on the day that Copia was opening, I was seated outside the restaurant, which is known as Julia's Kitchen.
Yes.
And I was sitting with Julia, and I'm originally from Boston, and I had grown up not only watching Mastering the Art of French Cooking as a book, and then watching her as the French chef on TV on our local public television station, and having her be part of our local public television auctions. She was at the grocery store. I'd see her at Mr. Savinor's or Mr. Dewar, the butcher, or Captain Martin's, the fishmonger. We would see her there. But I was seated with her in Napa, California, the weekend of the gala opening of Copia. And I had my glass and she had hers, and there was a little white wine in each. And I asked her, I said, Julia, what was the toast that you and your husband Paul would share when you welcomed guests and entertained at your home? And so she took her glass to mine, clinked it to mine, and said, Le Carillon de l'Amitié, the bells of friendship.
Oh.
And so
that captures everything,
May we hear the bells of friendship when we're together. And in the spirit of this world that we share, may you be inspired by the words of our guest, Raghavan Iyer, to go in your restaurants and reimagine what's possible.
Thank you. And
thank you for joining us, Raghavan. Thank you for all the
wise.
Pleasure. A man of your age has much wisdom, and we'd like to share that. Is that okay to say?
Well, I just turned 59. There you go.
Okay, so I'm just coming up behind you, Raghavan. So don't worry. Now, when this all ends, I want you to come to Vegas and spend a couple of days in Vegas. Jennifer will come, and we'll just eat our way through all the most
I
fantastic
would
restaurants.
love it. And it's
be
interesting
fun.
because that's one city in the entire United States I have yet to go to. So I would love to do it. So.
Oh, we would love to have you. We would love to host you here in Vegas, right, Jen?
Absolutely.
Can we take him to Honey Salt? Honey Salt, Elizabeth's restaurant?
We'd have to start with Honey Salt.
Okay, good.
Anywhere we can get a fantastic martini, and then we can move.
I like to say anywhere that's free, then we can get the martini.
That's a given.
Thank you, sir.
I will make you a
Thank
fabulous
you.
martini wherever we are in the world, and I wanted to thank you for coming. And we really will endeavor to do something with your Mashed and Smashed book, because it really is the pandemic pantry pleasing book of the moment.
Thank
And
you.
Raghavan, if you and I could chat offline, we'll grab 1 or 2 recipes and share them in our upcoming June issue.
Perfect. Sounds like a
Thank
great
you,
idea.
Mike. He's my friend now. Okay. Thank you,
Well,
Raghavan.
Of course you are, Michael. Yes, I will talk to you both and continued success with your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm in love. I'm in love.
Right?
One time, I'm not going to lie, I met Miss India, right? And I was in love right then and there. And I said, this will be the only Indian that I will ever love. I will never, the whole continent, I will never love again another from another continent. Now,
she was lovely.
well, she was Miss India, and she was just so polite. Like, I've never seen anybody so polite in my life. And now I think that what's that?
And a little bit beautiful.
A little bit beautiful, but you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When you look like me, not so many people are that much more beautiful, you know? But in the end, I think she's trumped now by Raghavan. That's it. Plus, I don't think she knew how to make a good buttered chicken. You know what I'm saying?
Can I tell you, Pizza Karma is something that is going to be part of our next wave.
Pizza Karma
Right?
is the most brilliant idea I honestly have ever, I've heard probably in the last 6 months. And I have guys hitting me with stuff all day long. And you were trying to tell me about it, and I was like, whatever. Right? Remember that?
I tried to tell you.
But oh my God!
Now
Because
you
if
get it.
Let's think about it. All right. So what's that? The California Pizza Kitchen, right? If you go in there, you can get that like Thai pizza. I remember getting the Thai chicken pizza, and it was like, ooh, we're so trendy, right? This mind-boggling. Like I would take dates. Go, hey, let's go to California Pizza Kitchen, CPK, huh? We'll get some Thai chicken pizza, right? And then the girls from Maryland would be like, but I like barbecue chicken pizza, right? Because they're, it's a little bit south. And I'm like, oh no, this is mind-boggling. This, another notch. I mean, he needs to be in Vegas. This is
Right.
when Vegas is, I mean, I can't even imagine how many they would sell. Just boom, boom, boom.
I just
boom,
want
boom.
you to imagine the next Las Vegas Food World. How do you not have a Pizza Karma?
I can't even. I mean, you talk about. My friend Gio owns Pizza Manzu, and he uses a beautiful sourdough crust, and it's a delicious pizza, and he puts prosciutto and all that on it. This would be mind-boggling. I can't even imagine.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I want to actually it's almost like I go to this fair, this county fair in California, and everyone laughs at me and thinks that I'm disgusting, especially my family, but they have orange chicken burritos, like Chinese orange chicken burritos, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And then I'm like, I have to go to the Orange County Fair because it's the only place I can get my orange chicken burrito, right? Then I saw this guy was making pho burritos, but he went out of business, and I never got to taste it. But
They were
the
soggy.
concept.
That was the problem.
No, there was no soup in it. It wasn't like you didn't bite and get squirt in the face like it was a sponge. But this, I don't even like to use the word fusion. It's like, because it's not. It's like,
It's not a fusion.
no, I mean, I'm literally, if I have a pizza crust here, if like Papa John's has good pizza crust, you know what I mean? When you're done with that, I'm dipping it in honey. My kids are like, you're disgusting. Why are you putting honey on pizza? Anything I can find. Anything. I'm telling you, I buy all the little things, the little jars of Indian. Although, I could whip them up myself. I don't know why I buy them.
Yeah,
right?
but you know what? Maya Kamal has done that for us. That's why the other
Maya,
day we were talking to her. We were imagining how we're dipping and tasting and mixing and.
I mean, why am I dipping chips in salsa all the time? There's no reason for it, right?
Unless it's the unless they're the most irresistible chips and it's the most irresistible salsa. If this time hasn't taught us that if everything is uncertain, meaning we don't even know if we get it tomorrow, make every meal count, make every sip count, make everything count. And if you're going to go...
Are you ending the show? Are you ending the show right now?
No, but it sounds like...
Or are you just are you on a rant? Because it sounds like you're ending the show.
I'm on a toot.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it's as simple as this. Don't waste a bite, a sip, or a morsel. We have to be present and make everything as irresistible as possible. And when we have a pantry and we have limits, we turn to our friend Raghavan. We turn to our inspiring teachers and chefs and mentors who inspire us to try to get irresistible at that level. Almost irresistible means go back and keep trying. Only if and when, and unless and until you hit irresistible, do you actually say, now that's what that's supposed to taste like. And that's where we're supposed to go. And we can't compromise that any longer. Even if it's a peanut butter sandwich, if it's a piece of toast, if it's a burrito, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's an irresistible example of what it is.
I think you're irresistible.
Well, it's just because I'm wearing my fancy coat today.
I'd like to get on a text with Raghavan and we could just talk about how irresistible you are in your kimono.
No, let's talk about how irresistible his pizza at Pizza Karma is.
Notice I said kimono.
Irresistible.
I know. I'm going to have to go to Minneapolis now just to have some.
I think we should have someone come from Minneapolis with one in a box for you.
I'm going to go to this guy Chris's place, Mint. I'm going to go make me a pizza, bro. And he's going to look at me like I'm crazy. I swear to God. And he's going to look at me like I'm nuts. I'm like, I'm going to leave if you don't. And he's so worried about the whole Food and Beverage Magazine thing. He'll have all the guys in the back, right, whipping up, get the chicken out of the tango oven. They will come up with something. And I'm telling you, this is a brilliant concept. It can't be done by anybody but him, right? Raghavan has got it.
It will be delicious, but it won't be the irresistible that Raghavan does.
No, of course not. We know that. No, we know that.
Yeah.
What a show. What a delight.
Well, I got to tell you, we were supposed to have another guest on with us today, Karine Lacoon from KB Network News. She is known to everyone as the Iron Palette. If you were a fan of the Iron Chef shows when our good friend Carrie Simon was rock and roll chef Carrie Simon and Todd English and the other chefs were there, and Iron Chef Kat Cora and Iron
Bobby.
Chef Play. She was regularly one of the judges. She was often the judge who was considered to have the most impeccable palate. But
so what happened? Where is she?
She was supposed to be on with us today, and she never had an emergency and is going to be on with us again another day. She's completely fine, but she is begging for forgiveness. But she has. You talked about.
I like that, begging for forgiveness, because Raghavan would have it no other way.
Miss India didn't have manners as impeccable as Karine Lacoon.
You're great. All right, well, fantastic.
But you know why?
Why?
Because she went to Sacred Heart just like I did. We are educated in the same tradition.
I am just glad that she almost didn't come on, because Raghavan, who you told me we only had 20 minutes with, turned out to be over an hour. Thank God, because we needed him.
And we ran out of time.
All day long, I could talk to him. He is so fun and so enchanting and so engaging. I mean, don't call me later and tell me somebody said something nasty about him, because I'll get mad. You know how you do that sometimes. Okay.
Nobody on the planet says anything about him because he's genius. Anyway,
you know what he's like? You know what he's like, Jen? He's like an M&M. Candy on the outside, yummy, delicious chocolate on the inside.
Oh, he's more than that, honey.
I'm going to go and make my special curry dressing right now, and I'm going to make the kids eat it, and I'm going to go in honor of Raghavan. And when I give Raghavan the recipe, which I will do one day, this could be his breaking moment. He may be able to get awards after I give him that. After I give him my recipe. Got
every award they give in our category.
I know. This is going to take him to the next level. I'm telling you.
You know who's on tomorrow? You know what we're doing tomorrow?
What? Who? Where?
We are going to Texas.
Nice.
And we are going to taste a Texas whiskey. And we're going to have one of the all-time world-famous Texas-based cookbook authors author of 37 James Beard Award-winning and IACP Julia Child Prize-winning cookbooks, author of the Only Texas Cookbook. We're going to have her on to do a food and whiskey pairing tasting. And we're going to do this with these incredible Texas whiskeys that we're going to introduce you to.
That sounds like a beautiful thing. Jennifer, kiss your loved ones and your babies. What did you say?
And count your blessings, everybody.
And we love you. We'll see you tomorrow.